What is a ghostwriter and why may you need one? And when should you actually write your own book? I'm just going to unpack that a little bit. So a ghostwriter is usually a professional author. They most often come through the journalistic training, and they will take your story, your ideas that are in your head, and they will actually drive them down into what is a written format, into paper. And the problem most people who may want to write a book have is they have lots of thoughts, they have lots of ideas, they know what the book's about. But the challenge is, how do I get it out of my head and onto paper? And there are many reasons you may want somebody to write your book on your behalf, or let's say with you. And the first may be lack of time. Busy businessman, thought leader, businesswoman, business person, doctor, doesn't matter what it is, just no time. The second is lack of ability. You're not a writer. You may be a specialist in your field, you may be a musician, but writing's not your thing. And the third is just a lack of interest. You know, you've been told a million times, you've got a great book, you've got a great story. Everyone wants to hear what you have to say, but you just don't actually really enjoy the writing process, or you've tried and failed. In which case, it is time to look at somebody to support you in the journey. A ghostwriter will then sit with you and over a period of time, get the story out of what I call the ether, out of the ideas space and into the book. The first thing to know about ghost writing and engaging a professional ghostwriter is it's not an inexpensive exercise. In fact, it should be expensive. And the reason for this is that you are paying somebody for a huge amount of their time, firstly in devising the structure, asking the big questions about what is this book about, who is the reader, which shelf is it going to go on, what are the chapters, so the big questions, unpacking the structure of the book, the idea of why you want to write, the concept of who is a reader. So once that structural work is done, that person is then going to invest almost as a year of their life to get the story first out of your head and then onto the book. And that's the reason why it's an expensive exercise, and it should be. So I often say to people, first up, are you prepared to pay a fair amount of money for your book? And if not, write it yourself. I always say, in fact, write your book yourself. You are the best person to write this book. So once that is out the way, and once you understand that this is going to cost, the experience becomes quite straightforward. Firstly, a contract has got to be signed. So I have about 10 to 20 ghostwriters on my books, depending on the time and who's available. And they're specialists in their field. And we need an agreement, because you, as the commissioning author, are one party and the writer is your hands and your voice, and they're the other party. So an agreement has to be reached that sets down the terms of engagement, the fees, how the fees are paid, who owns copyright, what happens if there's plagiarism, whose responsibility is to fact check. And then the process begins once the agreement has been signed and made. Most often, if I ghostwrite a book, I work in a conversation basis. So I've got my structure already. That'll take maybe a month of us working together. We know what the chapters are like. And then it's to sit and verbally unpack that. It can be we go on holiday together, which happens a lot. It can be we spend 2 weeks somewhere. It can be we do it over 6 months on Zoom calls and we record it. And what happens is I'm pulling out of your brain your information. About 4 to 6 months down the line, the writer will give you back what we call the first draft of your book. And the first draft is a rough assembly. It's really all those things you've spoken about, all your intellectual property is suddenly in one place. It's not the final version on any level, because what then begins is an engagement between you and the ghostwriter, in which you start to add your own voice, your own words. You take things out, you put things in, you say, this doesn't work, we're going to revisit the whole book, move that around. And then over the next few months, that process will unfold. And that's really how the game is played. The beginning mold is put in the right place, and then the finessing and the fine detailing is a collaborative effort. But once you've got those words down, no matter how good or bad or in between or boring or exciting they look, suddenly you start to see, well, here's my story unfolding. And then you've got something to work with, whereas before it was just in your head and maybe you spoke it out, or maybe you taught it over many years. And Over the period of, I'm going to say, of 8 months to a year, you will get to a place where you're holding a book that's long enough word count to be on the shelf, to be stocked, to be shared at the back of a room if you're a professional speaker or you're an inspirational speaker. And over this long investment of time and energy, you will end up with, within 12 months, that product, a product that can open doors, can change your life, can change your career, and put you in the realm of published author. Please remember, the name on the cover of the book will be yours. And the agreement with the ghostwriter, and that's why the contract is so important, is, are they on the cover? Is it you with them as the name of a journalist, or is your name on the cover? And somewhere in the book, maybe they're credited as an editor. So those are all nuances that you unpack over the contract phase. Fairly standard. I've done this for 14 years. I've got 14 books. I've ghostwritten for celebrities. I have writers on my books who write specialist stuff, who write from 30,000 words up to 80,000 words. So all of these are established ways of getting your book out there, of getting the right research, pulling all the words together. And that's the process to understand and to work with.